Hello, and welcome to the Ticking Along podcast, where we talk about Tourette's and our life experiences. If you would like to be on the show or have any comments or questions, please contact me at tickingalong@gmail.com. That's TICINGLONE@gmail.com. I appreciate you taking time to listen. Now let's get into the podcast. All right, today on the podcast, I've got River speaking with me, and he makes YouTube videos, and he's a great friend of mine. So I'm gonna have him kind of explain his channel and all that. So what kind of channel you got, River?
Yeah, good afternoon. It's afternoon here in South Africa. It's 3 o'clock. Yeah, I started a YouTube channel about 8 months ago, just purely because I wanted something, I wanted to talk to somebody and I wanted to, talk about these feelings I had. So I started a YouTube channel and it's called River Real Life Vlogs. And it is just a channel dealing with a condition. I've been diagnosed with Tourette's, and on the channel I talk about Tourette's and addiction, and I really basically talk about my life in vlog. I chat about what goes on in River's life.
There you go. Yeah, and I really like your YouTube channel. It's kind of something I look forward to anytime you post something. And I found it through one of your Tourette's videos. I go through every so often, and we'll try to find people who make Tourette's videos and stuff like that. And the way I do it is I go on YouTube and search Tourette's, and then I change the search criteria from overall videos to just videos of the week. And then that way you can kind of find what I would define as like the real videos, because if you don't change that, you get these videos that kind of or the kind of big news stories, and you get, I think, I don't know, I can't remember who posted it. It was like a BuzzFeed type video, and stuff like that. But I'm trying to find videos that kind of, we have real people kind of talking about it and explaining kind of their end. And there are a lot of things you can find through YouTube in the smaller channels that just haven't taken off yet, or that aren't these big production channels that are actually very, very, very educational, or very fun videos to watch. So I found your videos through that, and then I've been watching them every single video that you posted since I've subscribed. So
Great stuff.
I also like learning kind of updates on what's going down where you live in South Africa, and how the world works over there. Because being in the U.S., you kind of you tend not to think about kind of how the rest of the world works, because the rest of the world kind of tends to have a better understanding of the U.S. than the U.S. has of the rest of the world, just because how much media is shared from the U.S. So the question for today is, let me bring it up, kind of explaining how we first noticed Tourette's, and kind of our first experiences with it, and kind of our journey to kind of where we've gotten to now. So River, how's that worked out for you?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for watching my channel and all the compliments, and you being a subscriber is exactly what I want to talk about, because I don't think people are informed about South Africa and Tourette's. I've also searched Tourette's widely, and I find it's more broadcast as a joke and something that is humorous, where us with Tourette's, it's a real struggle. And yeah, it's a very good question of how I developed, how I first noticed it in myself is, as an adult, you you understand things, and you have a bit of a tick, and you understand it's not right. So I started having this a little jerk in my shoulder, and but it was really just a little jerk. But when that started happening, I started noticing that I've got a twitch in my eyes. But
Yeah.
I'd been doing it all my life. That it was, I thought it was just a twitch. And then I've also had what you call in America, I think, a stammer. Yeah, a stuttering problem, a
Yeah,
speech.
stuttering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stuttering.
When
And
when when
then
you how old were you when you like really noticed like, or when how old were you when you got like severe tics?
Well, I stuttered as I stuttered as a child very badly, so badly that
Uh
I only learned to speak at a very old age. But when I noticed my tics very like that there was a medical problem, you're gonna
yeah.
laugh. But I was only like 41 years old, which was only say 2 years ago that I started realizing that oh, my body's doing something that isn't normal.
So with your so you're saying you kind of like had very well, other than I guess the stuttering, but the rest of your tics as a kid and even as a young adult were very um subtle in that you kind of overlook them.
Yeah, it started very mildly. As a child, I think, children are strong vessels, because they don't know what something is. And we're not scared of things that like that we don't really understand.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, when the tics started, they were very subtle. Like, when you get a fright, when you relax and you get a fright and your body jerks a bit, you think, oh, it's just a little bit of a jerk. So it literally started with a little jerk. But then when I started, having a cup of coffee and the coffee would land on my wife or land on the lap, then I realized I'm not having control over this. So it got progressively worse very,
Mm.
very quickly. And that is when I started thinking that, hey, I don't know if this is just a normal bodily function happening here.
Yeah, and I know that you were having problems with doctors and stuff down there. Um,
Yes, that is, and that is also why this is the whole reason, and this is why I'm so grateful to you as a subscriber and the other few Americans that I have, is that you don't realize what people don't realize in a third world country. And, in South Africa, we have the rich and we have the poor, and there's a few people in the middle. But only the very, the people who are rich can afford medical and medical aid, which I think you'd call insurance, is so expensive here that I can afford it for my wife, but not for myself. So going to the doctors to get a diagnosis of Tourette's or just trying to figure out what is wrong with me because I thought I was dying. I thought I was having strokes or something. So
yeah.
I started seeing doctors, but in total, I think I've seen maybe to date in the last 8 months, I've seen 7 different doctors that 5 of the 7 haven't had a clue what Tourette syndrome is. And the 2 that have known have been in the profession where I've had to pay thousands of rands to even, get a consultation with them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean even over here you hear of people who have, gone to a doctor and kind of just gotten pushed aside and especially in like when they are trying to get diagnosed as a kid, sometimes doctors will be like, well, yeah, uh, those are ticks and they'll go away, or those it's just a tick, or kids just do weird things. So sometimes you can get the doctors to admit that's a tick, and other times they're just, well, kids do weird things. And then when you're an adult, um, uh, if they kind of accelerate later on, or you don't really notice them until you're an adult, um, because of the criteria. It used to be up to the age of 21, onset before the age of 21, but now it's uh, onset before the age of 18. to be categorized as Tourette's. Um,
Good.
so if you get it past that age, it gets categorized as um, another specified tic disorder. Um, if you can get somebody to diagnose it. But over here you usually have to go through a neurologist, which is a special. So since they're specialists, they tend to be more expensive. And but when I was younger, um, I kind of the main thing that I noticed when I was younger is just like kind of like rage attacks, um,
Okay.
and just having a it just out of nowhere getting this just kind of anger feeling, uh, and that I always thought that was kind of weird, but didn't just. I mean, I'm like, well, okay, that's just a thing. Um, and then I didn't start really having. I didn't get like a real tick until I was 17. And so when I was at a youth camp. So during one of the times where we were all gathered and sitting for the sermon and whatever, I noticed my head just started to jerk. And at first I thought it was because um, so during that time I was trying to um, become self harm free. And so I was stopping cutting, and through that, I would kind of shake the thoughts out of my mind. So anytime a thought would come to my mind, I would kind of just shake my head, and then that then morphed into like a head jerk. And so I was sitting there, and in a crowd of people, and then all of a sudden my head would just jerk, and I'm like, uh, that's that's not. It's like I didn't mean to do that, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't seem normal. And so just throughout the rest of the day, it started happening more and more. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. And so I kind of looked into it a little bit. And at that point, I wasn't having any vocal tics or anything. It was just that one head jerk. So I'm like, well, it's just a nervous tic type thing, or a um, kind of a tic related to just um, anxiety or whatever. And then oh, and then when I was 19 is when it really picked up, and I started developing just out of nowhere kind of um, went from having that one tick to having 14 others, and then now I've just kind of lost track of how many. Um, and they kind of come and go, and all of that. But yeah, so it was kind of weird. And then now looking back, I can see that as a kid, um, probably from the age of at least uh, at least 9, possibly sooner. I kind of had this tightening in my chest, feeling that now is associated with my tics and everything. Um, and so I think that's kind of when it kind of really started. But I didn't really notice any tics because I think I was just still my body was suppressing them or whatever just without me noticing it. And I would get these. It would lead to me, um, as I was getting older. It's probably the worst. Was when I was 14 or so. I would just always have this tight feeling and feel like I just wanted to scream and uh, you know throw my body around or whatever. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, well, maybe it's uh, I kind of connected it with depression because that kind of came with it, and I was kind of thinking, well, maybe it's like an anxiety feeling, but I wasn't, there was no thoughts of anxiety connected with it. And so, um, looking back, I can see that it's really this Tourette tightening kind of premonitory urge that wasn't expressed. It just didn't have it didn't have a tick yet to express itself, but it was still that same feeling. Um, do you get any premonitory urges before you tick, or do you just tick without noticing
No,
beforehand?
Dad, that's why I was dead quiet in what you were saying now because it is so interesting, and this podcast is just so unbelievably informative because it's everything that I'm trying. It is the whole meaning of my YouTube channel, in a sense, is that people aren't aware of Tourette's, and it leads, especially in young children that don't know what it is, like what you talk about, the self-harming, the depression and everything. Those are these pre-urges that people have, and I have them, sitting here doing this podcast. I don't know how many people are going to hear it, but we both are nervous, and I don't want to sit here and start making it uncomfortable, like to listen to, because of the vocal tics and that. So you're trying to concentrate on something else, but while sitting here, I'm having these pre-tics, or whatever you call them now, is where I can feel the tics coming on, but my body is
Mm,
trying to do something to not make them happen. So if you had a camera on me now, you would laugh because I've got I'm sitting on my chair, but my hands are holding the seat, trying not to tick. And then I've got, something close to my mouth to try, like maybe a piece of bubble gum or something to try to stop the vocal tics. But definitely you have these pre-feeling to a tick. And often on this point, people say, but River, if you having a pre-feeling, can't you stop it? And the old age saying that people with Tourette say is, well, how often can a person, when they're about to sneeze, stop a sneeze? You can't. You know, these are
yeah.
the tics, is you get this feeling. And I think that is where the self-harming came in also for me. And the depression is that you want to stop it, but you can't. So you try to do something to your body to prevent this feeling, and you have this feeling of, like, where I know for a fact I'm gonna, my arm's gonna flick out now, and and I did it today. My wife gave me a t-shirt, and I knew I was going to grab that t-shirt out of her hand and throw it, but there was absolutely no way I was going to stop it. It was a tick. It was a thing in my body that is Tourette's. It was a tick. So I have a lot of those, but you sadly you can't stop it. There is just no way.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm for the most part, my ticks aren't problematic as far as I haven't I haven't done anything um, that that caused any harm. I don't think. I do know the other day I think was the first time. Well, I do occasionally throw things out of my hands, but my my subconscious brain will suppress a lot of the ticks to where I'll get the feeling, but my body won't allow me to actually do the tick unless it's unless it's like safe to do so. And which I'm grateful that that's kind of the way that my brain works through it. Um, but like I haven't thrown my phone yet, and that's one thing, especially when I'm working out over like the water or something.
Yeah.
I haven't thrown anything into the water or anything like that, which is good. But the other day I did throw. What was I eating? I don't know. I think I was eating. I was eating a cookie, and I got this feeling like, that I just that my arm was about to throw it, and then then did, and kind of tossed it onto the floor. I'm like, well, there went that.
No, but that is exactly and that is exactly how it starts, and the urge becomes more. So, if you don't mind me asking you a question, aren't you a little bit concerned because here, we are friends, but we're about 20 years apart in age. Are you not concerned that wow, River has these severe tics? Am I maybe not heading that way as well, where I'm at the stage where I have broken a phone, I've broken camera parts, I've broken numerous dishes? Are you not concerned that your ability to not do something is going to be overridden, and you're going to start doing it, like throwing your phone into the ocean?
Well, I think that my ticks won't get too severe, because I feel like I've got a lot of control over it when, um, especially when I'm around others, for the most part. Because when I'm out working, they just like they'll disappear when I go to like meet with a customer. For the most part, anyways. So occasionally I do have some sort of um, uh, subtle ticks, but they kind of disappear when I'm out meeting with a person, or stuff like that. And then, but I do notice that they get extremely bad, or they tend to ramp up when I'm driving, and then uh, some bit of when I'm out getting groceries, and kind of, um, typically when I'm alone, and when I'm not alone, I'll get this kind of growing feeling that I need a tick, but it's not coming out, and I don't want to um, kind of be a nuisance, or whatever, or I don't want to annoy other people around me. So it kind of builds while I'm around other people, and then when I get to myself, typically in my car, because when I'm home, I've got neighbors right next door, and we share a wall, so I don't want to annoy them if I'm having loud ticks or something. So usually they come out when I'm driving in the car, and they've kind of morphed into a lot of vocal ticks now, which, if with driving is fine. The ones that concern me are the ones where I'm wanting to uh, swerve the car, or when I have to take my hands off the wheel, or something like that. So the only thing I'm kind of concerned about is that getting so bad that I won't be able to drive anymore. Because if I can't drive anymore, then I won't really be able to do my job. I mean, there's some bit to where I could still do my job, but I won't be able to do it to the point that I am now, and I wouldn't be able to um, really make enough money off of it to really continue it as a job, um, or as a career. So that's kind of the only concern I have um, over it, but I don't know.
Do you suffer from, do you also, like, before the before the Tourette's and that, did you ever have a bit of OCD, of obsessive compulsive disorder?
Um, not really. I don't think. I mean, I might have just a slight bit of it, but I don't really have. I don't know. With OCD, you kind of have the sense of dread, if you don't do something, or if something's not right. And I don't really get that. I do know that um, when I first got a car, I would knock on the hood as I pass by it, and I don't know if that was an OCD type thing or not. Um, but I mean, I don't have enough OCD to say that I have it. I might have, just slight OCD tendencies, but not really enough to, you know, call it a disorder.
Mm.
'Cause I think that everybody has some sort of OCD type things, or a lot of people have that stuff, but it's not really OCD unless it causes some distress.
Yeah.
Um, and Tourette's Unite makes a good video on Tourette's and OCD, and how Tourettic OCD is different from regular OCD, where regular OCD has a sense of dread to it. Tourettic OCD has that kind of Tourette feeling to it, rather than a anxiety type feeling to it.
Um,
Um, and she explains it really well. I don't know how old the video is, but it's on her channel. And yeah, so what are some things that kind of excite or lessen your ticks?
this is very, very interesting because it is definitely something that I feel more when I'm incredibly happy or excited, which I found very frustrating because I have got a very challenging past, and I have got a very dark side, meaning that I can go through many days of depression. And
Mm-hmm.
I especially living in the country that we're living, and having Tourette's and a few other illnesses that I have, that happiness isn't a feeling that I can feel too often. But then when I do have this good, happy feeling and excitement, like with my job, I often, go do photography at an exciting place. And I feel this excitement, but then the Tourette's gets unbelievably bad because of the excitement. So it's definitely excitement and happiness that brings on the Tourette's, but then also,
Mm-hmm.
worry, or not sadness. I'll come into that now, but like worry, anxiety, like now with the lockdown, both my wife and our businesses are shut down, and we've just heard yesterday that they're going to be shut down for another month or 2 months, and that causes
Oh,
bad Tourette's. But then last week, when
yeah.
I had to put my cat down, sadly, and at the vet, when they were busy putting down my cat, I was the most calm I've ever been with my
Uh-huh.
Tourette's in 8 months. I had practically no tics. Only thing I had was my eyes twitching. So it got me to figure out that tragedy, like deep, deep sadness, was blocking the Tourette's, but happiness and anxiety causes severe Tourette's. So there is actually no getting away from it.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if that's something to do with like your heart rate, and because excitement would make your heart rate go up, and anxiety would do the same. So, but then sadness, I would think would slow the heart rate. So I wonder if it's something to do with that, and like your blood pressure causing being a trigger.
That's very interesting. I never thought about it
Um,
that way.
one of the things that really bothers me is that I mean, the ticks are one thing, but like the feeling of I get like a tightening in my chest, and this sometimes this I don't know how to really describe it. Not really a cold feeling or empty, but it's just this tightening in my chest. And one point I had something that was very similar to, but I can't remember what it was that I had it compared it to. But it's just this feeling that just kind of tightens your chest and just makes you feel awful and keyed up, and that's really my main problem with the Tourette's, because I mean, the tics I can deal with, but this feeling is it's a feeling, and it's kind of can bring you down at
Is it
times.
not anxiety?
One, I no, it's not really anxiety because there's with anxiety there would be something you'd have to have something to be anxious over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just there's no thought around it. There's no um really yeah there's not really a thought connected to it or anything even an abstract uh connection to it. It's just a feeling. Um, I would probably say it's probably similar. It's probably or possibly the same feeling as anxiety. Um, but with anxiety, you would have some sort of thought connected to it. Um, or situation connected to it.
I know you get something
So
called
it's kind of weird.
a panic disorder, but like you say, that there's nothing to initiate it, like everything is okay, so you shouldn't be anxious. But I know
Yeah,
that feeling
yeah,
very
and yeah,
well.
yeah, and panic disorders. I've got a friend who gets real bad panic attacks. And I don't know how people deal with those. Those are um, I've only experienced kind of this out of nowhere panic feeling once, maybe twice in my life. Um, and one time it was just I was it was when I was kind of still early in my career and what I do, and so I wasn't quite confident in my ability. And I was doing some kind of stressful stuff, uh, and so I think that kind of brought it on a little bit. Um, but it was something I'm like I don't know how people deal with this, just kind of as a normal thing in their life.
Yeah.
Um,
No, anxiety and
but
panic. I've also had a few anxiety attacks, and anxiety, I think, is an absolute one of the worst things to have to suffer with.
do you ever get sleep paralysis or any um what do they call them tics where you can't move that cause you not to be able to move?
I have these. I don't know if it is, sleep paralysis. That's actually unbelievable, and that you asked that because I suffer with, think of the name now. PTSD, post traumatic stress. And that
Okay.
causes me to have night terrors. But ever since I've had the
Hmm.
Tourette's, it's been a lot worse. And it is this continuous nightmare of not being able to move. And you're in a position where you have to move, but you can't. And I have actually wondered if it hasn't got a bearing on the Tourette's because it's a nightmare. And this paralysis, like where I can't move at night, is happening almost weekly, several times a week. So yeah, it definitely happens.
Hmm.
And yourself?
Well, I mean, I've experienced sleep paralysis once. Um, I think I was in my early teens, and I woke up and I just couldn't move my entire body, and I thought, because sometimes when you wake up and you slept on top of your arm or something, and your arm's asleep, and so you can't move your arm. I'm like, so at first I thought it was something like that. I'm like, well, is my entire body um, asleep? Is there not enough blood flow throughout my entire body? And so I'm like, am I ever going to be able to move my body again? And it probably only lasted for 5 to 10 seconds, but in the moment it feels a lot longer. But then I was eventually able to move my fingers and then slowly get the rest of my body to kind of come back. Um, yeah, it's definitely a scary thing to
Oh no,
experience.
it is 100%, 100%.
One thing I found that kind of excites my ticks are like certain foods, typically like oily foods. So um, what I would, for the most part, think of as like fair foods. So like uh, corn dogs or funnel
What is a
cakes,
funnel cake?
pancakes even.
Well,
Huh?
what is a funnel cake or funnel cake?
So what it is, it's you make it by taking like a pancake type batter, and then and then pouring that slowly into a deep fryer, and then it kind of makes this um, spirally uh, mess of bread, and then you sprinkled powdered sugar over top of that.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll serve it with ice cream or um, strawberries or whatever, really, chocolate even. And it's a very sugary and uh, typically the only time people would eat it is if they're at like a fairground or something.
Okay.
Uh, so it's not really a normal day to day thing. But pancakes, which I eat quite often, uh, can trigger them. Um, Sometimes potatoes will trigger them. I know a lot of people have problems with like food dyes. So like the red food dyes or blue food dyes
Okay.
and stuff like that in their drinks. Um, I don't think I have a problem with that, but if I do, I don't want to I don't really want to change my diet because of my Tourette's. I'd rather deal with them than to change my diet. But depending on your severity and how much that um, you know can help, it might be something worth looking into. Um, but but yeah, and then excitement definitely uh, triggers my ticks. Although I went to a theme park last year, and I wasn't sure if that was going to make them worse or better because it was the first year I was going there with having my ticks get worse. And the entire time I was there, I was calm and didn't have any ticks. And I think that was because I was in a crowd. So my brain just was like, okay, you're around people, don't tick. And that's kind of a weird thing. Like I don't quite understand how my brain decides to not tick when in certain situations. And I know a lot of people, don't have that, and they just, when they're in a situation where they don't need to tick, they end up ticking more, such as like airports and stuff like that.
That's why
Um,
your ticks are so interesting
so
because, with me, I can often be like it's so strange. I will be fine like 10 minutes before I'm making a clip. And, but the minute I'm making a clip and the camera's on, then my Tourette's is very bad. And I've even done it like where say I'm going to make a clip, but then I don't actually put the camera on, but the ticks still get bad. And unlike, where I'm at home, the Tourette's, yeah, my Tourette's is consistently bad these days, but the minute I'm around people and I've got anxiety because I don't like being around people, then my Tourette's is bad. So, at home, sometimes if I'm alone, I not control it, or maybe I'm used to it. I don't understand. But definitely when I'm in public, then, I have some form of a tic that is bad.
yeah, and I've noticed lately I've had an uptick in in my Tourette's as far as the corporalia, and so I've had to kind of watch that a little more. Um, and for the most part, I don't have bad swearing tics or anything like that. So, but I do still have I've got uh one or two that try to come out. Um, but so I've got to watch those. Um, and I try to kind of if I get any ticks that are problematic, I try to kind of redirect them to a different one and into doing something different.
Yeah.
Um, and that usually works, but it's still kind of something I've got to stay conscious of, or the original tick will kind of work its way back. Um, so that's definitely something I got to watch for. But what are some things that like lessen your ticks that like make them calmer?
Phew, I wish I knew. No, no, yeah, definitely, definitely. We don't watch a lot of TV, but I will watch, like, we have Netflix, and if I watch something while I'm working, like I'm working on editing and that, and then I've got
Hmm.
background noise, let's say background noise, but it's not so much noise, it's like a series or a TV show, but it's in the background and it's people talking and that. Then I can often, have a constant like little jerk or something, but it's not, bad vocal ticks and like ticks that I'm knocking things over. And I think that is the only thing that really helps. If I'm sitting and I'm watching something like a series, but I'm also at the same time busy work, busy working, because if I sit next to my wife and we just try watch a movie, then I've got ticks constantly.
Hmm.
So, I think, yeah, just being busy more with more than just one thing, like watching something and busy editing or, typing emails or something.
Yeah, and I noticed that the last time I went to go to the movies, um, I was having to suppress my ticks. Um, so I'm like, it was kind of weird because I didn't, I never had to kind of suppress my takes in a situation like that before, and maybe it's because the theater room was full or whatever, but like there was, I was having to keep myself from fidgeting and from making noises or whatever. But usually, kind of what keeps me from taking a lot is if I've got something that I'm listening to and kind of getting information out of, and has if my brain's working on something, they'll calm down. And um, as I'm working, I'm usually always have something playing through my Bluetooth, and I'm listening to either music or a YouTube video or something like that while I'm working, or an audiobook or something, and that kind of keeps me from uh, getting uh, I get either thinking about the ticks, or kind of keeps them distracted for the most part. Although I also tend to listen to like the Tourette's podcast, um, and some other stuff where I'm listening to people talk about Tourette's, and that sometimes excites them, sometimes will keep them calm because it's like when you think about the Tourette's, it kind of can excite them, but also when I'm listening to other people talk or listening to information or giving information and stuff like that, they get calmer. So I kind of go when I'm listening to that, I kind of go back and forth between ticking and not ticking. Um, yeah, definitely having something playing and that my brain can work with definitely helps calm them. I've noticed that when I'm around people who don't know I have Tourette's, or if I'm around people who I'm like talking to that don't know I have Tourette's, or in the same room with where I'm kind of where I would have attention on me, my Tourette's will get a little they'll lessen. But if I'm around somebody that knows I have it, they'll kind of express themselves more. So the ticks will kind of pick up a little bit. Um, so I'm kind of I'm kind of on edge on whether or not I should tell people I have Tourette's or not. Because in a way, if I don't have to suppress, that kind of puts some stress off of me. But then again, if I tell them, then my ticks will come up more. And then if I wanted to not be ticking, it would take more energy to suppress it. So there's kind of a dilemma
Yeah,
there.
it's a difficult one, and I also, also with my business and then, with my channel, a lot of people, will leave a comment on email and say, why do you have to tell everybody you got Tourette's? It's like bringing tension to yourself. But there is, but when you even have had one vocal tick, you run the risk of swearing at somebody or saying something offensive. And if you haven't told anybody you've got Tourette's, you can't all of a sudden fall back on say, "Oh, I've got Tourette's." So I find I'm upfront with my Tourette's with everybody
Yeah.
because when I'm not ticking, like the other day, was when I think it was during one of my videos that one of the subscribers, Tion, that young friend of mine, said, "Oh, your Tourette's actually looked, you looked good today. Your Tourette's didn't seem bad, but you were fidgety all the time." And I said to him, "But that's Tourette's. Like if I had to go to a movie, I might not be having these huge tics, but I'm disguising them with fidgeting, which people say is more irritating because I'm always, moving, and that is trying to almost disguise the big tics with fidgeting, which is far more uncomfortable for me. So I just find I tell people from the beginning I have Tourette's. I was at the bank yesterday, and yeah, it was okay in the beginning, but then all of a sudden what did I do? I did a stupid vocal tick, but it turned into like a throat clearing, and I could see the lady was now what was going on. And I quickly just said to her, "Oh, no, sorry, I've got Tourette's." And all of a sudden, she understood what was, why I was acting like a lunatic.
Yeah, and I was the only thing that kind of comes up to me is when I'm like go out getting like groceries or something, I usually just don't care and just let my takes go. And so I always have the thought like, do people think I'm on
Yeah,
drugs? Because I mean, I'm over here, flinching and making weird noises, and I'm like, I probably look like I'm on drugs or whatever, and I not that it really uh, matters all that much, but yeah, I kind of have that thought going like, if I'm over here ticking or whatever, am I going to be getting weird looks? And I hear a lot of people, talking about how they get weird looks or whatever, but yeah, I haven't noticed anything really, but because I find that most people kind of stick to themselves and they're worried about their own things. So they're not really too focused on you. But I mean, I don't live in a big city where I'm taking public transportation or something like that. So I'm able to stick to myself more so than other people. So I don't know how much people actually notice my ticks or not, but I mean it's kind of its own thing. I find that um, I need to have some time where I can just let them out. Otherwise, they'll build and it'll just bring on depression and stuff like that. So
definitely. That is what I try, talk about in my talks, and I try. And it's difficult. I'm 42 and I don't want to be having Tourette's, but I've got one of my subscribers. She's a lady in her 60s or 70s in Pretoria, and it's about 1,000 something kilometers away from us. It's a big city, and she's had Tourette's her whole life, but she is discriminated upon because of it, and people think she's mad. But I try to tell people that you've got to just try be yourself, and you can't worry what people think of you, but we are all human, and especially with Tourette's, it's a very self-conscious syndrome illness. It's and people do judge. People do people look at me funny. And I often wonder, is it because they know I was a drug addict, and are they thinking it's the side effects? But like I say to everybody with Tourette's, you got to be so strong emotionally and inside to cope with it.
Yeah, and I find that nowadays, at least over in the U.S., a lot of people are more willing or more accepting of mental conditions and stuff like that, and neurological conditions. So it's not as bad as it used to be, but Tourette's is still not as widely known. So you do get people thinking that it's just swearing or stuff like that. Um, and yeah, for the most part, people are willing to um, understand and kind of change their thinking on it. So it's not people aren't as it's not as taboo, I guess, anymore. So you can be more open about it. And sometimes I wonder if I should tell some of my clients or customers that I have Tourette's. Like if I'm working, if they're gonna be there while I'm working or something. But yeah, I don't wanna go through and say, hey, I've got Tourette's, and then think, oh, because I have Tourette's, I might not be able to do
Yeah,
the job.
no, exactly.
I haven't gone through and told anybody yet. Um, I mean, I don't know how they're going to react, and it doesn't affect my work any. So there's no obligation for me to say it.
Well,
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I also worry about with the photography because Tourette's can affect my photography, but I think I miss out on a lot of work because of my Tourette's, but I can't help it, and I often say, well, the right clients will come my way, like my YouTube channel. I realize that the right people will come and subscribe, and the right people will come and be a part of my journey. So, it's just a journey of life, eh?
Hello, Ticking Along here. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. I appreciate your time. If you would like to get further into the community, please feel free to join the Ticking Along Facebook page. You'll have to answer a few questions before being let in, but as soon as you answer those, I'll be sure to accept your request. If you want more content like this, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment or review on the podcast apps. Thank you. It's very appreciated, and it really helps out the podcast. Bye.